What's crazy, Pranitha, is that cardiovascular disease is still the number one killer on the planet. 93% of Americans have some metabolic dysfunction. About 40% of women get cancer. 39% of men will get cancer in their lifetime. Most diseases that people are facing today are chronic diseases, which are primarily driven by lifestyle or environment, and they're mostly preventable. Not only preventable, but if you know what's going on, you can reverse it. And with function, you can actually find out what's happening.
That's so powerful. And I think it's important to note that the number one question we get asked is, how is function different than a regular checkup?
Well, Pranitha, here's the thing most people don't realize. Your body isn't just a collection of parts and organs and biomarkers. It's a symphony. It's an orchestra. It's a coordinated dance of all the systems working together. And one of those instruments is out of tune, well, the whole performance gets screwed up. So function measures over 160 lab tests organized into categories. It shows how everything connects. It's not snapshots. It's not isolated numbers. It's the whole symphony.
I want you to explain.
Okay, let's start with your heart, the drumline, the rhythm that everything else follows. Cardiovascular disease is still the number one killer on the planet, and typical checkups tend to focus on conventional standards. Good, but they're missing most of the music. So in your routine physical, here's what you get. Triglycerides, a type of fat circulating in your blood used for energy. LDL cholesterol, the so-called bad cholesterol. It transports cholesterol through your bloodstream. You get HDL. That has a better reputation. It's a cleanup crew. It clears excess cholesterol from your blood and shuttles it back to your liver for removal. And total cholesterol is the amount of all types of cholesterol in your blood. So that's a start, but here's the problem. Two people can have similar LDL levels, and one is at higher risk for a heart attack at 52, while the other lives to 95. Why? Because LDL does not tell the full story. And here's what many people aren't measuring. Have you heard of apolipoprotein B, or ApoB? ApoB provides a direct count of plaque-forming particles, including LDL and others. So when you measure ApoB, you're counting the number of particles that can physically wedge into your vessel walls and form plaque. Now, two people with the same LDL can have different ApoB counts. The one with a higher ApoB, higher cardiovascular risk, even if their cholesterol looks normal. And then there's Lp(a), a cholesterol particle with a unique protein that makes it more likely to stick to arteries, to trigger inflammation and promote plaque buildup. Now, I really want you to be familiar with this one because it's largely genetic. You can eat well, you can exercise, have a relatively good cholesterol profile, and still have an elevated Lp(a), meaning you may be at increased risk for heart attacks and strokes. And most people have never had it tested. But it gets even more interesting. It's not just how much LDL you have, it's what kind. LDL pattern gives us categories for LDL particles of different sizes. Some are large and fluffy like beach balls, what we call pattern A. These are less likely to contribute to plaque buildup. Others are small and dense like golf balls. That's pattern B, and they're more likely to become oxidized, to penetrate arterial walls, and to trigger plaque formation. And we also measure LDL particle number. How many LDL particles are floating around in your blood? LDL peak size is the average particle size in your blood. LDL small refers to this subtype of cholesterol particles that are smaller, denser, and higher risk. And LDL medium is another particle size with moderate risk that helps complete the picture. Now let's talk about HDL. We don't just measure HDL cholesterol, we measure HDL large particles because just like LDL, size matters. Large HDL particles are considered protective and they're favorable for heart health. And they shuttle cholesterol from tissues and arteries back to the liver for removal. We also measure the total cholesterol to HDL ratio, and this gives a deeper insight on the balance between the potential harmful particles and the protective ones. And non-HDL cholesterol measures all the cholesterol carried by particles, excluding HDL, that can contribute to plaque buildup in the arteries. And here's a biomarker that ties these factors together. High sensitivity C-reactive protein, or hs-CRP. This detects low-grade systemic inflammation in your body. And inflammation can be linked to many chronic diseases, including cardiovascular disease. Even in the absence of other risk factors, hs-CRP is a powerful signal. Now, these 15 heart markers don't just give us numbers. They give us context. They give us patterns. And that's the difference between a snapshot and a story. And when you can see the story early, you can be empowered to change it. A lot of Americans are running low on essential vitamins and minerals, and they don't even realize it. So we measure the foundations, like vitamin D, which is critical for your immune system, your bones, and your mood. Low levels have been linked to bone loss, fatigue, frequent illness, and depression. Calcium is key for strong bones, nerve and muscle function, and a steady heart rhythm. Now, zinc supports immune health, which helps wounds heal and plays a key role in growth and tissue repair. We also get the whole picture when it comes to iron. We don't just look at hemoglobin and send you on your way. We look at your ferritin, your iron reserves, and iron, how much iron is in your blood right now, and iron saturation, how much your iron-carrying protein is actually loaded. And we also check out iron binding capacity, how much more iron your blood could carry, so we can spot problems before they show up as full-blown anemia. Iron deficiency is one of the most commonly missed issues in women. Now, a woman's hemoglobin can come back borderline normal just inside the lab range, and the doctor says, you're fine. But her ferritin is very low, which means her iron reserves are drained, and her body is working overtime just to keep that borderline hemoglobin number. Meanwhile, her hair is thinning, she can't focus, she's got insomnia, and her exercise performance has tanked. She's told that stress or aging or just being a busy parent, it doesn't make sense to stop at one number when the whole iron story is right in front of you. And then there's homocysteine, an amino acid that shows how well you're using key B vitamins like folate, B12, and B6. When it runs high, your risk for heart disease, stroke, memory problems, bone loss goes up. So it's a powerful early warning signal. And here's something many people don't know. You can have a normal B12 level on paper and still be functionally low. That's why we measure methylmalonic acid. It shows whether your body's actually using B12 properly, not just whether it's floating around in your blood. And then we measure your omega-3 fats, EPA, DHEA, and DPA. They are key for lowering inflammation and supporting brain health and heart health. We compare them to your omega-6 fats, including arachidonic acid and linoleic acid, to calculate your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. Now, in modern diets, omega-6s often outweigh omega-3s, and this can shift the body toward a more inflammatory state, and it can raise long-term disease risk. So if you measure it, you can fix it before the imbalance becomes disease.
Let me talk to the women for a second, because I live this. You go to the doctor and you say, I'm exhausted, and they give you birth control. My periods are all over the place. I don't feel like myself. And again, they give you birth control. They run a few tests and say everything looks normal, or worse, you're just stressed. I want to say this out loud. You are not crazy. You're being dismissed. Your hormones are not a side note. They are a critical section of the orchestra. And when they're off, the whole song falls apart. Here's what we actually measure. Estradiol. It's the most potent form of estrogen. Most of it is made in your ovaries before menopause. It's essential for your reproductive system, yes, but it also supports your bones, your brain, your metabolism, and your heart. And when it's too high or too low, that signals that there's a story. And then there's testosterone. Yes, women need it. It affects your energy, your muscle mass, your libido, your mood. When testosterone is too low, energy can drop. Strength gains can stall, and libido can take a hit. And when it's too high, it can drive things like acne and unwanted hair changes. We measure both total testosterone, which is everything in circulation, and free testosterone, which is what your body can actually access. We also look at two key pituitary hormones, FSH, which is follicle-stimulating hormone, and LH, which is luteinizing hormone. FSH helps your ovaries grow follicles and get an egg ready, while LH triggers ovulation. Patterns in FSH and LH can give you insight into where you are in your reproductive timeline, and whether you may be at risk for ovulation or fertility issues. Prolactin is another hormone made by your pituitary gland that handles breast development, milk production after birth, and keeping your cycle regular. When levels are off, this can disrupt ovulation and lead to irregular periods, fertility challenges, or unexpected milk production. And then there's a marker that almost no one explains. SHBG, or sex hormone binding globulin, controlling how much of your estrogen and testosterone is actually available for your body to use. You can have normal hormone levels on paper, but if your SHBG is too high, those hormones are tied up, your body can't access them, and you may not feel so good. DHEA sulfate is made by the adrenal glands and is a key building block for sex hormones like testosterone. Too high, and it can signal excess androgen production, sometimes linked to PCOS. Too low, and it may be a sign your adrenal glands are under strain from chronic stress, aging, or other underlying issues. And finally, AMH, anti-Müllerian hormone. It's produced by the small follicles in your ovaries. Each contain an immature egg, so it provides a rough estimate of how many eggs may remain. It can offer important insight into your overall fertility timeline. Many women only hear about AMH when they're struggling to get pregnant. For example, a woman might have normal FSH and LH, but a low AMH that indicates a diminished ovarian reserve. Without measuring AMH, she doesn't see the full picture. But if you knew earlier, you have options and can plan accordingly. Here's what women need to understand. Hormones don't just affect fertility. They affect your bones, your brain, your heart, your metabolism, your mood, your sleep. And when they're out of balance, multiple systems suffer. And too often you get told that it's in your head, or it's simply just part of being a woman. Your symptoms are real, and they deserve real answers.
Okay, man, most of us don't go to the doctor until something is seriously wrong. We're pushing through. And this is where we might get blindsided by things that are measurable and fixable. We have to do better and know our hormone numbers too. We measure testosterone, both total and free. Now, total testosterone shows how much you're producing. Free testosterone shows what your body can actually use. And that difference matters. Low testosterone doesn't just affect libido. It can affect muscles, bone density, energy, cardiovascular risk, even your mood. In some cases, it can present as depressed mood or fatigue. Sometimes men may be prescribed antidepressants without addressing a root cause. And then there's SHBG. That story adds another layer. Remember, sex hormone binding globulin, or SHBG, is the gatekeeper. If SHBG is high, more of that testosterone is tightly bound, and it's less free for your body to use. Now, you can still feel like you have low testosterone, low energy, low libido, changes in body composition, even with a normal total testosterone number. Then there's DHEA-S for men too. DHEA-S is a hormone made by the adrenal glands that serves as a precursor to testosterone. It offers clues into your overall hormone production, to stress load, and the pace of biological aging. We measure FSH and LH, or follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. These serve as two key signals that help us understand how well the testes and the reproductive system are working. Prolactin is a hormone made by your pituitary gland that can suppress signals from your brain that stimulates testosterone production. When it's too high, it can contribute to low testosterone, low libido, and erectile issues in men. And I'm proud to say we also take prostate screening seriously because prostate problems usually develop silently, so you have to pay attention. And because you can check anytime, you can see what's happening before the traditional window when most guidelines start talking about PSA screening in your 50s. But PSA can rise from inflammation, from enlargement, not just cancer. And that's why we measure your prostate-specific antigens, PSA total, PSA free, and the PSA % free to add context instead of just reacting to a single number. And surprisingly, we also measure estrogen because men have estrogen too in the form of estradiol. And estradiol is important because when you're overweight or you have body fat, the testosterone gets converted to estrogen or to estradiol. And that makes you have more feminization. Now here's an organ almost everyone misunderstands, your thyroid. It helps set the tempo of your entire body. Your thyroid is a small butterfly-shaped gland in your neck, but it influences a lot more than its size suggests. Your energy, your weight, your mood, your temperature, your brain function, your heart rate. When your thyroid's off, the effects can show up across multiple systems. You may be exhausted all the time. Maybe you can't lose weight no matter what you do. You might be cold when everyone else is warm. Your mood may be off. Your hair might be falling out. And here's what should wake you up. Many of these symptoms can trace back to the thyroid. So what should you measure? First up, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. TSH is made by your pituitary gland in your brain, and it tells your thyroid to wake up and make more hormones. If your TSH is high, your brain is yelling at your thyroid to work harder. If it's low, your thyroid may be overactive. Now, for decades, TSH was treated as the main character in the story, but it's not. TSH is just a signal. It's not the hormone your body actually uses. Now, some doctors may also measure free T4 or thyroxine. This is the main hormone your thyroid produces in response to that TSH signal. Now, T4 affects your heart, digestion, metabolism, brain, bones, muscles. But here's the catch. T4 is raw material. Your body has to convert it into free T3 or triiodothyronine. That's a big word. That's the active form of thyroid. So get this. You can have normal TSH, normal T4, but if your T3 is low, you may still feel off. Most doctors never check T3. They assume if TSH and T4 look okay, well, you're good. But the conversion problems are more common than you think. Stress, inflammation, nutrient deficiencies, these are a few of the factors that can impact the conversion of T4 to T3. Now here's where it gets critical. We don't just measure thyroid hormones. We also check if your immune system is attacking your thyroid. We test for TPO antibodies or thyroid peroxidase antibodies. These are immune proteins that attack an enzyme your thyroid needs in order to produce hormones. Now, if your TPO is elevated, it can be an early sign of Hashimoto's, which is the most common cause of hypothyroidism. And we also test your Thyroglobulin antibodies, or TgAb. Same story. Similar to TPO antibodies, their presence can indicate your immune system is targeting your thyroid, which may contribute to thyroid dysfunction over time. Now, we're starting to see many people taking GLP-1 medications trying to lose weight, but sometimes the issue isn't appetite. They may actually have untreated hypothyroidism. And when the thyroid is underactive, your metabolism slows down, especially from the autoimmune disorder Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's affects roughly 1 in 6 women, and many discover it late, just years of fatigue and weight gain and hair loss and brain fog without answers. And here's what most people don't understand. You can have elevated thyroid antibodies for years before your TSH ever goes out of range. By then, most significant damage has already been done. But if you catch these antibodies early, well, you can start shifting your diet, you can calm inflammation, you can support your gut, all before your thyroid fails. This is the difference between managing a disease and preventing one. So we're not just asking, is your thyroid working? We're asking, is your thyroid getting the right signals? Is it making enough hormone? Is your body converting that hormone into the active form? Is your immune system turning on you? Together, these 5 markers tell a much more complete story. And that's how you catch thyroid disease before it becomes your new normal. Now, when it comes to stress, your body can react in similar ways, whether it's a lion chasing you or an inbox full of unanswered emails. Stress can be physical or psychological. And chronic stress influences healing and aging. It shows up in your blood. We can see it. And more importantly, we can change it. We measure cortisol, your primary stress hormone. It's made by your adrenal glands. And when it's out of balance, it can affect multiple systems: your metabolism, your immune system, your sleep, your mental health. Prolonged high levels of cortisol can drive weight gain, especially around your belly. We also measure DHEA-S, a precursor for key hormones that supports energy metabolism and hormone balance. As you age, DHEA-S levels naturally decline. And when it drops too low for too long, it's a sign to look deeper. Low DHEA-S is linked to chronic stress, to fatigue, and just overall decreased resilience. These 2 markers together can show how your body is handling stress and whether your body is adapting or burning out. You don't really hear people talking about the pancreas, but they should. Your pancreas is about 6 inches long. It's tucked behind your stomach where you can't feel it. Most people don't even know where it is until something goes wrong. Your pancreas does 2 critical jobs. It produces hormones to regulate blood sugar, and it produces enzymes to digest food. But when the pancreas becomes inflamed, those enzymes are digesting the pancreas itself. That's called pancreatitis. And chronic pancreatitis, especially in its early form, is often difficult to diagnose. And it can progress from mild discomfort to something very serious very quickly. We measure 2 key enzymes. Amylase helps break down carbohydrates. When it's elevated, it can signal pancreatitis, but also other conditions like issues with your salivary glands or your digestive system. Lipase breaks down fats. High lipase is more specific to the pancreas and an important marker of pancreatic inflammation. Elevated levels don't tell us everything, but they can tell us when to pay attention, because some people might ignore stomach pain. They assume it's something they ate. They take an acid, they move on. But pancreatic inflammation doesn't always go away. Sometimes it becomes chronic. Sometimes it causes permanent damage. Elevated amylase and lipase can be a reason to look deeper and follow up with the doctor. Alone, these markers can't make a diagnosis. Context is important. In certain conditions like cancer, they require other tests, imaging, and a specialist evaluation. These markers are not specific for cancer, but we can help identify patterns that say something may need attention. Now, pancreatic cancer is among the most difficult cancers to catch early, which makes paying attention to early warning signs in your body that much more important. These 2 markers are part of how we keep watch. These markers also can be commonly elevated in people who take GLP-1 drugs for weight loss. It's an early marker of pancreatitis, which is a common side effect of these drugs. Stop for a moment and imagine your own body attacking itself. Not a virus, not bacteria, your own immune system mistaking your joints, muscles, nerves, and skin for an enemy. Your thyroid for a threat, your gut for an invader. That is autoimmune disease. Over 15 million Americans live with an autoimmune disease: rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, Hashimoto's, celiac disease, psoriasis, multiple sclerosis, and the list goes on. And here's what many people don't know. It takes months, sometimes years, for people to be diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. we give access to the ANA screen, or anti-nuclear antibody screen. This screen looks for antibodies that sometimes target the body's own cells. ANA can be seen in many autoimmune conditions, but it can also be found in healthy individuals. If the screen is positive, an ANA titer is used to measure the specific concentration of ANA. High titers are more commonly associated with autoimmune conditions, especially when correlated with symptoms, medical history, and physical exam. Now, ANA pattern refers to the appearance and distribution of antibody staining on cells. Different patterns are associated with different autoimmune conditions. Rheumatoid factor, or RF, is an antibody linked to rheumatoid arthritis, rheumatoid vasculitis, and Sjogren's syndrome. Here's why it's important. There are people who spend years trying to figure out what's going on in their bodies, trying to understand their joint pain, exhaustion, brain fog, and stress. Questions can get dismissed. Concerns can be minimized. It shouldn't have to be that way. Autoimmune markers, in the context with a whole range of tests we make available, can provide valuable information. They can also serve as signals that put your data into context to explore your health further. And they can help identify patterns that may be associated with autoimmune activity. When you have your data, you have the knowledge and power to make changes that impact your life. Your immune system isn't confined to one organ, and you can't point to just one spot on the diagram. It's a network. Lymph nodes, spleen, bone marrow, gut. It's distributed through your entire body. The soldiers of your immune system travel through your blood and lymphatic vessels. When we measure them, we can learn how our vital defenses work. We start with your white blood cell count, or WBC. Now, these cells can help defend the body against infections, inflammation, and other stressors. If the count's too low, well, you're vulnerable to infection. If it's too high, something's triggering your system. Neutrophils make up 50 to 70% of your white blood cells. They're your frontline defenders against germs like bacteria, viruses, and fungi. High neutrophil levels can be seen in bacterial infections. Lymphocytes are a specialized intelligence unit. They remember past infections. They direct immune responses. They fine-tune your defenses. Monocytes are on your cleanup and patrol crew. They defend against invaders, regulate inflammation, and support tissue repair. When monocytes are elevated, it can be associated with infection, autoimmune disease, or stress. Eosinophils defend against parasites and play a role in allergic conditions like asthma. Basophils fight allergens, pathogens, and parasites. They're the smallest population of white blood cells, less than 1% of the total. But that also means persistent elevations can be significant. The immune system is truly a brilliant network that protects your body from disease. Every 24 hours, you make up to 100 billion white blood cells. In total, there are an estimated 1.8 trillion cells in the immune system, each with an important role to play, defending you every day. Did you know that the most common source of toxic mercury I've seen is not from a factory or an industrial accident? It's someone eating tuna twice a week because they're trying to eat healthy. Mercury accumulates in fish, especially the big ones. Tuna, swordfish, orange roughy, halibut. This is an area that I think surprises people the most because no one thinks they're doing anything dangerous or being exposed to heavy metals. But over years, mercury builds up in your tissues, your brain, your kidneys, your nervous system. Same thing with lead. If your house was built before 1978, well, there's a good chance there's lead paint hiding somewhere, old pipes, old plumbing. It can leach into your water. You drink it every day and don't even know it. These toxins don't introduce themselves. There's no alarm that goes off when your lead level hits a dangerous threshold. You just start feeling off, brain fog, fatigue. You may be irritated, have trouble concentrating. You think it's stress or lack of sleep, but it could be one of these toxic metals. These toxins build slowly over decades, so we measure both. High mercury exposure is linked to cognitive problems, neurologic damage, and can increase cardiovascular risk. A number of women have thought they were in perimenopause from the brain fog and mood swings and fatigue and difficulty concentrating. And when they stopped eating high mercury fish, well, the symptoms resolved. High lead affects your brain, your blood pressure, and your kidneys. In kids, it lowers IQ. In adults, it accelerates aging. But most people never get tested. By the time you have symptoms, the damage is already done. Now, if you know, you can stop the source and support your body's natural detox pathways. But you can't fix it if you don't know they're there. Okay, we're moving on to metabolism. Now, here's a number you need to know. 93% of Americans have some metabolic dysfunction. That means only 7% of people in America are in optimal metabolic health. Now, many doctors just look at glucose or fasting blood sugar. And if it's high, you might get diagnosed with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. We also measure hemoglobin A1C, which is your average blood sugar over 3 months. Now, this shows patterns, not just snapshots. But here's the problem. By the time your glucose is high, you may have had insulin resistance or metabolic dysfunction for years. So we measure insulin, the hormone that actually controls blood sugar. It's not included in your average physical. It should be. It's one of the earliest warning signs of poor metabolic health, and it goes up years before glucose does. Your body produces more and more insulin to keep your blood sugar normal. So your labs look fine, but underneath, well, your cells are becoming resistant, and that resistance is linked to metabolic syndrome, to weight gain, high blood pressure, fatty liver, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, even Alzheimer's. Have you heard of the term skinny fat? It's someone with a normal BMI or weight, and they look thin, but their visceral fat, the fat packed around their organs, is dangerously high. You can't see visceral fat. You can't feel it. It doesn't show up on a scale, but it does show up in metabolic markers. And visceral fat is metabolically active. It drives inflammation, it drives insulin resistance, and cardiovascular disease. Looking healthy and being metabolically healthy are not the same thing. And this is why we measure. Then there's leptin. Leptin tells your brain you're full. So when leptin is high and your brain stops listening, well, that's leptin resistance. You're hungry, you're gaining weight, and you don't know why. It's not about willpower. It's biology. We also measure something called uric acid. Now, most people think that's just about gout. It's not. High uric acid is linked to metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, kidney stress, and cardiovascular disease. So you can feel good, you can even look amazing, but your metabolism can already be breaking down. Metabolic dysfunction is a major driver of almost every modern chronic disease: heart disease, stroke, cancer, dementia, even infertility, obesity. It's not a side issue, it's the root. But here's the best part. Metabolic dysfunction is not the destination. If you change your lifestyle, nutrition, sleep, movement, you can flip the script. But you can't reverse what you never measure. Now listen to this. Nearly 1 in 3 adults has liver disease. When you hear this, you're probably thinking it's a lot about drinks. But here's the kicker. One of the biggest drivers isn't alcohol. It's sugar. It's called metabolic associated fatty liver disease, or MAFLD. Or MAFLD. This is what it means. Your body starts storing fat in your liver, and over time, this can progress to inflammation. And it's one of the most common liver conditions in this country. We know that it can develop from patterns over time. For example, having 7 or more sugary drinks a week is linked to a 53% higher risk of this liver condition. Other conditions like obesity and insulin resistance can lead to it as well. Early on, it rarely shows symptoms, so it can be easy to miss, which is why liver markers can tell us more about someone's metabolic health than they might realize. Your liver is your body's processing plant. It filters toxins, it produces protein, it stores energy. We measure 9 liver markers: alanine aminotransferase, or ALT, and this enzyme leaks into your blood when liver cells are damaged; aspartate aminotransferase, or AST, it's another enzyme found in liver, heart, and muscles that signals injury or disease; alkaline phosphatase, or ALP, it helps detect liver problems and also bone issues and other conditions like malnutrition. And when gamma glutamyl transferase, or GGT, is out of range, it becomes an early warning sign that your liver is under stress. Context is everything. These markers work together to tell a story that no single measurement can. We also measure total bilirubin. When it builds up, your liver might not be clearing waste properly. Total protein measures the proteins in your blood, many of which your liver makes. Low levels can mean your liver is struggling. Albumin is critical for fluid balance and nutrient transport. Globulin supports blood clotting and your immune function. And the albumin to globulin ratio, well, this can reflect shifts in kidney, liver, or immune activity and help us learn about how the body's producing and using proteins. But here's the good news. MAFLD can significantly improve, even reverse, with sustained lifestyle changes. The body's very resilient. Eat whole, nutrient-dense foods, cut out sugar, move your body, and your liver can heal. Do you know your blood type? Well, if you do, you probably got that info and you haven't thought about it again. Well, we check these markers through function, your ABO group and rhesus factor, because it's essential for safe blood transfusions, for organ transplants, pregnancy care, and your blood type is just one piece. Your blood is doing a lot more than that. It's carrying oxygen to every cell in your body. It's clotting when you get cut so you don't bleed out. It fights infections. It's transporting nutrients. You might have a feeling when something's off: exhaustion, weakness, shortness of breath, pale skin. You blame it on being busy, not sleeping enough. But in some cases, it might be iron deficiency anemia, a common blood condition that affects red blood cells. We measure 9 other markers that give you important insights about your blood. Hemoglobin is the protein in your red blood cells that carries oxygen. Now, when it's low, your tissues may not be getting enough oxygen. Hematocrit measures the proportion of red blood cells in your blood. It's a critical indicator of oxygen carrying capacity and hydration status. And red blood cell count measures the number of red blood cells in a sample. And then we look at the size and the quality of those cells. MCV, or mean corpuscular volume, measures the average size of your red blood cells. MCV can help identify different types of anemia. MCH, or mean corpuscular hemoglobin, is the average amount of hemoglobin in each red blood cell. It's similar to MCHC, or mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration, which shows how densely packed the hemoglobin is in your red blood cells. RDW, or red cell distribution width, is another marker I want people to pay attention to. It shows variation in red blood cell size. Now, these cells should be fairly uniform. When there's a high variation, it can point to nutritional deficiencies, early anemia, or chronic infection. It's a subtle signal that adds valuable context to other markers. We also measure platelet count. Platelets help your blood clot. Now, too few can increase your risk for bleeding. Too many can increase your risk for clots. MPV, or mean platelet volume, shows the average size of platelets, which gives information on their activity and how they're being produced. And these markers are fundamental for your blood health. We check them as a baseline to see changes over time. Here's another set of unbelievable stats. An estimated 35 million Americans have chronic kidney disease right now. Up to 90% of adults with chronic kidney disease don't know they have it. Now, many people don't have the symptoms until the disease is very advanced. Proactive testing can offer earlier visibility, helping you understand what's happening in your body. Your kidneys filter waste from your blood. They balance your fluids and electrolytes. They regulate blood pressure. If they fail, toxins build up in your body. We measure creatinine. It's a waste product from your muscles. People make different amounts depending on muscle mass, diet, age, and physical activity. Now, if there's an issue with your kidneys, blood levels can rise. Blood urea nitrogen, or BUN, measures another waste product that can build up when your kidneys struggle. And the BUN to creatinine ratio helps check how well the kidneys are working and what might be causing kidney problems. Creatinine-based eGFR, or estimated glomerular filtration rate, calculates how effectively your kidneys are filtering waste and filtering excess fluid from your blood. It's a well-known indicator of kidney function. Now, albumin is measured in your urine, sometimes called microalbumin. Even when small amounts are found, it may be an early signal of kidney stress. Elevated levels of this marker are associated with conditions like high blood pressure and diabetes. Risk factors include insulin resistance and abnormal cholesterol. Now, if a person with type 2 diabetes comes in with a normal creatinine and normal BUN, you might think their kidney function is fine. But if their microalbumin is elevated, tiny amounts of protein are leaking through the kidney's filters, and that leak is an early and measurable signal for diabetic nephropathy or kidney damage. Years from now, if nothing changes, that leak can persist and kidney function can deteriorate, which could then progress to end-stage renal disease. So here's what people need to know. Early on, kidney disease doesn't announce itself. There's usually no kidney pain, no alarm bell. Kidney function can slowly decline before symptoms are apparent. But if you learn about it near the beginning, you have the opportunity to slow it down and course correct. Let's talk about your trips to the bathroom. Every time you go, you're flushing away one of your body's significant health signals, and you're not even thinking about it. Your pee. But hundreds of years ago, doctors diagnosed disease by looking at urine, color, clarity, even the smell. It was one of the first diagnostic tools in medicine. And we've gotten a lot more sophisticated since then. But the principle is the same. Your urine tells a story about what's happening inside your body. Your kidneys, your metabolism, your hydration, infection, even early signs of diabetes. We give you access to a detailed urinalysis. Let's start with protein in blood. Protein in urine might indicate a kidney problem or a related issue. Occult blood checks for blood components you can't see. In some cases, it can signal infection or kidney disease. Red blood cells in the urine could suggest kidney disease or injury. In more serious cases, blood in the urine can also be an early potential sign of bladder cancer, a cancer where early detection generally and dramatically changes outcomes. And then we look for signs of inflammation. Nitrite checks for signs of bacteria in your urinary tract. Leukocyte esterase is an enzyme that can signal inflammation or infection. And similarly, an increased number of white blood cells can suggest inflammation or infection. Bacteria and yeast tell us what's present and provide context with other tests. We also measure metabolic markers. Glucose in urine can indicate diabetes or kidney issues. Ketones are made when your body burns fat for fuel. Especially high levels in the urine are linked to ketoacidosis and diabetes. Bilirubin may show up if your liver or bile ducts aren't working properly. Then there's additional properties. Specific gravity checks how concentrated your urine is. It gives insight on kidney function, hydration status. Your pH reflects how acidic or alkaline the urine is. Appearance checks clarity from clear to turbid. Color can be influenced by hydration status, foods, medications, and certain conditions. And finally, we look at crystals, casts, and other cells. Calcium oxide crystals are associated with kidney stones and metabolic imbalances. Uric acid crystals are linked to gout, stones, and metabolic syndrome. Triple phosphate crystals can signal early urinary tract infections. Casts, including hyaline casts or granular casts, can appear in specific kidney conditions such as pyelonephritis. Squamous epithelial cells, renal epithelial cells, and transitional epithelial cells help us pinpoint where the problem is. And amorphous sediment may be correlated with certain infections or metabolic conditions. They can provide deeper insights before useful information is flushed away. If you have ever started a new workout routine or tried intermittent fasting and noticed things like lightheadedness or heart palpitations, and you have no idea why, it could be related to your electrolytes. These aren't just things in your sports drink. They help regulate many of your body's most critical functions: nerve signals, muscle contractions, heart rhythm, fluid balance. And when they're off, even a little bit, your body might be giving signals: fatigue, weakness, heart palpitations, muscle cramps. We measure 6 electrolytes. Sodium is essential for fluid balance, for nerve signaling and muscle function. Take endurance athletes. When they lose too much sodium through sweat, it can contribute to cramping and fatigue. When sodium is too low, you can feel weak, confused, and dizzy. When it's too high, it may be a sign of dehydration or too much salt in your diet. Chloride works alongside sodium to maintain fluid balance and also supports digestion. Potassium also plays a critical role in nerve signaling and muscle contraction, especially in the heart. Low potassium can lead to dangerous, irregular heart rhythms. You know calcium, it's in your bones, but it's essential also for nerves, muscles, and your heart. When it's low, your muscle function and heart rhythm, they could be affected. Magnesium is involved in hundreds of biochemical reactions in the body. It supports your heart, your muscles, your nervous system, and many people don't get enough magnesium in their diet. And low levels have been associated with muscle cramps, sleep issues, and heart rhythm changes. Magnesium isn't always included in routine testing unless it's specifically ordered, which means it can sometimes be overlooked. And finally, we check carbon dioxide. It helps us understand how well your lungs and kidneys are maintaining your body's acid-base balance. These 6 markers play a central role in your body's electrical activity. When they're out of balance, you can feel it. And many people only look at them when something is wrong. With function, you can check them twice a year. Now I want to talk about something that represents the next frontier of what's possible in proactive health: imaging. Lab tests can tell us how your body's functioning, hormones, metabolism, nutrients, but what about your actual anatomy? What your body's inner structures and organs look like? The things you can't measure with a blood draw. That's where MRI and CTs come in. We believe you should be able to see inside your body and be proactive about your health. And I want to bring in someone who thinks about this every single day, Dr. Danna Chung.
Hi, Mark.
Hi. Okay, so when someone gets an MRI and imaging through function, what are we looking at?
So our motivation is to try to help others take control of their health before symptoms appear. MRI and CTs are powerful tools. The goal of function scans is to try to help identify early structural changes and potentially concerning findings within the body. There's a baseline MRI, which actually serves as a personal reference point for your health. And because MRIs don't use any ionizing radiation, you can safely repeat imaging over time, allowing you to track changes and get clear, responsible insights.
Wow. So basically what you're saying is you get the chance to get MRIs now without going through your doctor, without going through insurance, for relatively low cost. It's the consecutive scans year after year after year that really provide the value.
Exactly. You can track changes against yourself.
So tell us about this baseline scan. What are we looking at? How many minutes does it take? Give us the lowdown.
Our base MRI takes about 22 minutes to complete. So that includes your brain, your thyroid, liver, pancreas, kidneys, prostate, ovary, and more. And what we're doing is we're looking for signs of hundreds of potential conditions, including early signs of cancer. We also have some other scans. We have an MRI scan with spine, which layers on additional spinal coverage to look for potential bony tumors, herniated discs, fractures, and other degenerative changes. And then we have our MRI scan with skeletal and neurological assessment, which looks for signs of neurodegeneration in the brain, as well as aneurysms of the arteries of the head and the neck. It adds on something called a brain age analysis, as well as body composition, so that you can take a look and see whether or not you have muscle volume, fat volume, and looking for that risky visceral fat in your organs.
Wow. This is amazing. So basically what you're saying is there's different levels of imaging. There's the baseline MRI. There's an in-depth one that looks at your spine too, and your brain. And then there's ones that look at the brain age, which looks at the size of different structures in your brain and actually can tell very early if there's changes that may be leading to something like dementia or Alzheimer's.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you get to pick up all these other things that people don't think about, like brain tumors, benign ones, or even more serious ones.
Exactly. Yes.
And many people die from aneurysms. They don't know it. I mean, the first symptom of most aneurysms is sudden death.
Correct.
Right? So you just don't know it. And I have actually friends who've had that happen to them and they're gone. It's like they're healthy and then they're gone and it's preventable.
Yes. And there are no screening tests for any of these things. So this is sort of a way to be able to get that early visibility.
And then you mentioned the body composition, which is so important because what's happening in America is a metabolic health crisis. And that means that people have a lot of belly fat. And that belly fat creates a busted metabolism. And that makes them pre-diabetic and all the consequences that come with that, like diabetes, heart disease, cancer, dementia, and more, infertility, depression, you name it. And most people have no idea, even though they look in the mirror, they might think they're not overweight or that overweight. They could have a lot of visceral fat, the fat around the organs. That's the dangerous fat that kills people. And that's something you can change with lifestyle and diet.
Yeah. Let me tell you about a member case that's very similar to what you're describing. So Janice is a 38-year-old member. She was a smoker, overweight. She had an MRI that showed that she had severe fatty liver. So as you know, fatty liver can progress silently to cirrhosis. And so she was
And then you need a liver transplant.
Exactly. And so she was so motivated by the insights that she made meaningful modifications in her lifestyle. She lost 40 pounds.
Wow.
And then by the time she came back, her fatty liver had reversed.
It's amazing. Yeah. So these things that we pick up are fixable. People worry that, he's going to find something, it's scary, you don't want to do about it. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Let me give you another example. We have Wanda. She was an active mountaineer and she ended up getting an MRI proactively. And what that showed was that she had a brain tumor the size of her fist.
Wow.
So it was a meningioma, which is usually a benign, non-cancerous brain tumor, but hers was large. It was located right behind her right eye and very close to her optic nerve. She had no symptoms. And because this was found early, it was able to be removed completely without complications, which is really amazing.
Yeah, and most of the time when people find this, they're already symptomatic, they've already had damage. They may not be reversible. So this is something you can actually be proactive about.
Yeah. And I mean, just think about whether or not she was out on a mountain by herself whenever something would have happened. That could have had really scary consequences. She was so grateful that you created Function and that you were able to make early detection possible for her. And so she offered to bake you a cake to thank you.
Me?
Yes.
Probably not on brand, but that's okay.
She promised it would be healthy though. So, and then there's another member that has a really remarkable story. His name's Harry. His case is really remarkable. He was a 61-year-old non-smoker who was signed up by his wife. He said he just does what his wife tells him to do. So,
like most good husbands.
Exactly. I know. I wish I could brand that. So he had a lung CT along with his MRI. It showed a 1.5 centimeter spiky lung nodule. So it was cancer, no symptoms, fully cured now. So I think that basically what we're able to see is that we don't have standard screening tests for lung cancer for non-smokers. So his would not have been found until he developed symptoms, which would have likely been too late.
And that would be lethal then.
Yes.
Chemo, radiation, complications. I mean, it's bad news to find cancer late.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, cancer's greatest enemy is early detection.
Correct.
You mentioned the lung CT. Can you talk about what that is and how that is valuable in tracking? I just talked to someone who had a scan and they didn't know they had cancer. They were a 40-year-old young woman, healthy, non-smoker, and she had lung cancer.
So we offer a lung CT, which is a low-dose CT, to be able to screen for signs of lung cancer.
And that's low-dose radiation.
That's low-dose radiation. So it's looking for lung nodules like hairy or masses, but it can also look for other lung conditions like emphysema or other airway abnormalities. Since we're speaking about CT, we also offer a heart CT, which measures calcium buildup in the arteries and can generate something called a coronary artery calcium score or CAC score, and that helps you assess your cardiovascular risk.
So the higher the calcium, the worse your heart is doing.
Correct.
And more aggressive you need to be in prevention or even looking further what's going on.
Yeah. And so if you think about, if you pair that CAC score along with your function lipid biomarkers, you get a clinical picture to be able to make informed decisions.
And these don't take very long, right? MRI takes how long?
You can do it in 22 minutes. The CT, you're in and out within minutes.
3 to 5 minutes. Yeah.
Correct, yes. And so CT does use a small dose of ionizing radiation, unlike MRI. So it's low dose to make sure that you're not exposed to too much radiation.
Yeah, amazing. And what's now happening is this intersection of AI and medicine, particularly in the field of radiology. Can you kind of unpack that and how we use it at Function to make smarter, better scans and faster scans?
So the concept of MRI has been around for a long time, but it traditionally was very expensive and took a long time. And so that actually did not make it applicable for a screening study. But now with using AI to help advance our protocols, we're able to come up with a faster scan, which means that it's more affordable. And then we also have an FDA cleared AI to help improve the image quality that we use for some of our select select scans. We end up having all of our images read by a board-certified radiologist. We have the results sort of translated with AI to be able to make them easy and clear to understand. And then those are reviewed by a medical provider. So all of our scans are radiologist read, medical provider reviewed, and then for those select scans, AI-enhanced imaging.
Amazing. So Danna, how do the scans you get with function compare both the amount of time needed and the cost compared to a regular MRI?
So with the advances in AI, we've been able to streamline a protocol which takes high yield, high efficiency sequences to reduce the time in the MRI from several hours to just 22 minutes. And with that, reduce the costs from thousands to under 1,000.
You know, people think of these exams as stressful, but I actually find them pretty relaxing. I get to close my eyes, and chill out, just lay there. It's pretty good. Tell us about the experience.
Yeah, so I feel the same way. So I don't know if we're so overworked that we
Probably. It's like, I get an MRI. This is my moment to just do nothing.
MRI can be a little bit intimidating, but we do everything to try to make you comfortable. We provide you very cozy pajamas. You'll have a headset. You can listen to music if that's available. And then we always have a call bell that you can ring your technologist if at any time you're feeling concerned.
So Don, I think it's also important for us to talk about what the scans aren't doing.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that?
Sure. These scans are not meant to diagnose medical problems or monitor existing conditions, and they're not a substitute for emergency care.
So they're meant to look for early signs of disease before symptoms occur.
Yes.
It's the difference between reacting to and taking charge of your own health.
So after you get your labs, you have all this data. Now what?
Well, you get this beautiful dashboard where you see your in-range and out-of-range biomarkers. You get your biological age, and then you can click down into the biomarker that may be abnormal, and then you can engage with all your data, and you get a roadmap, and you get protocols, and you get exactly what to eat and how to exercise and what supplements to take. So you actually know what to do to manage what's happening in your body. You're not alone.
So clinicians are actually reviewing every single result that you get and writing a clinician note that is a deep dive across each system so that you have a sense of what's going on. It's the perfect storm of science, technology, medicine coming together. For someone like me, it makes it so easy to understand what's going on in a language that I can actually really internalize how things are going and where I need to work.
That's right. You know, one of our co-founders and our CEO, Jonathan Zwerdlin, said, this is not a niche problem for the wealthy. It's an 8 billion person problem.
That's right. Proactive health applies to everyone. And we built Function for everyone.
Because we don't just measure numbers. We measure metabolic function, immune function, cardiac function, hormonal function, brain function. We want to know how our body's functioning. Or if it's not functioning, what to do about it. It's a whole new operating system for your health.
Like, finally, we were there. It's shocking to think that we didn't have this agency before. And with Function, you have the opportunity to take charge of your health. Not just live longer, but really live better. You get to wake up, be present with your family, do what you love. And that is what health is.
And that's what makes Function possible for everyone. Stop guessing, start knowing, check your health.